It's a real pleasure to speak with the presenter of this year's McFadden Memorial Lecture here at Central Library, award-winning author Junot Diaz. His popular works include the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, along with his short story collections, Drown and This Is How You Lose Her. Juno has been a clear and passionate voice on the issue of immigration, and on top of that, he's a creative writing professor at MIT. He's fiction editor of Boston Review and was the 2012 MacArthur Fellow. Junot Diaz, thank you for spending a few moments before your presentation tonight.
Thank you for having me.
As you tour the country and talk with people about your works and the issues that I know are important to you, what overall message do you try to make sure you share with people for them to understand what is important to you in this day and age?
Well, there's a few that I kind of think of them as the perennials. One of them, of course, is a robust defense of the arts and of the arts and our education. I just believe that we are all, as a society, impoverished when we impoverish our arts programs and we, leave our artists unfunded. And then, of course, issues that are close to me as both a person and as an artist, issues dealing with social justice, issues dealing with immigrant rights, and issues dealing with the Caribbean and the African diaspora. All of those things are very important to me.
Okay. Well, I know the issue of immigration and that of the immigrant experience is core to your life, including your writing life. You came to this country at the age of 6 from the Dominican Republic. Do you continue to think of yourself as an immigrant, or does the experience of having to become assimilated at that early age still define what you do today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure there's as many answers as there are folks who've migrated from places to other places. For me, I don't seem to feel that one ever stops being an immigrant. I know I haven't. I know my siblings haven't. We have siblings that are born in this country. They have a completely different relationship to the United States, to English, to the culture than we do. There's something about being born in a place which naturalizes everything about that place, where someone like me, no matter how long I'm here, I'm always checking my verb agreements, my verb-noun agreements. The
Still
language.
to this day. Huh?
Oh yeah, man. It doesn't make any difference how skilled I become in Americanness. It's still something that I had to learn rather late in life.
Well, let's talk briefly about your Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. A couple of years ago, a poll of critics termed it the best novel of the 21st century to date. Tell us about Oscar, the character, for those who may not be familiar with the book, who Oscar was, and whether you encountered such a character as Oscar in your early life.
Yeah, well, first of all, that poll was taken like 2 years into the century, so it was it wasn't a hard bar or high bar. But I wrote this book, a novel, which has at its heart many difficult topics, dictatorship being one of them, how people of African descent find home and love in the New World was another one. And then, of course, there's this titular character named Oscar, who's this tremendous science fiction and fantasy nerd, just endlessly awkward, loves books, finds it almost impossible to play sports. He corresponds absolutely not at all to the formula of masculinity, both in the United States and the Dominican Republic. And as a character, he utterly fascinated me. I grew up in what we would call a hegemonic masculine family. I grew up in a family where my father's pastimes were judo and going down to the rifle range. That was every weekend. And so I myself was very nerdy, but compared to someone like Oscar, I would have seemed like a masculine, paragon. And it was that gap that fascinated me.
It's a great title for the character. Wow. the pronunciation of the Spanish youth trying to pronounce Oscar Wilde, the Irish novelist, is how that character got its name.
Yeah, he got his name because someone mishears wild, and wild in Spanish context sounds like wow, yeah.
It's been 5 years since your last published short story collection, This Is How You Lose Her. Where do you gauge your focus as a writer today versus teaching and activism?
Well, I've always been sort of distracted. It doesn't make any difference. If I wasn't doing anything, I'd figure out ways to distract myself. Generally, it just takes me a long time to figure out the work. There's no relationship, there's no correlation between work that takes a long time or work that takes a short time in its ultimate value. I just happen to have this pace where I need to dive deep, long, far for me to come up with anything of any value.
Mm-hmm. Any new books on the horizon from you?
I hope so, but for nothing I can name right now, you know.
And one final question. Our politics in this country are very divided. Where do you see the issue of immigration headed? Is it reconcilable? What solution, in your opinion, is there for this issue?
Well, I mean, the way that immigration gets posited at a national level is in itself deeply problematic. Ultimately, as a country, we've got to put down a lot of the fantasies and dreams we have about what immigration means and be very practical around this. Ultimately, as a country, we can't survive without our immigrants, and we can't continue the kind of robust economic or military sort of power that this country loves without this steady supply of immigrants. So ultimately, I would say that whether it gets better or worse in the next 10 or 15 years, we're going to need and we're going to have an honest reckoning where we put down all this nativist, emotional nonsense and be honest about who we really are.
Junot Diaz, thank you for joining us prior to your McFadden Memorial Lecture presentation here at Central Library. And you can check the library's catalog of materials for all of Junot's works, including e-materials from the library's website at ndpl.org.